Hello everyone and welcome to a weekly recap. We're back. We missed a week because I was just not here and was unable to catch up and do a weekly recap in good conscience, but I've officially caught up, sort of, kind of. Obviously, I traveled to Dallas this weekend to cast the homestand event between Dallas Fuel and Houston Outlaws, and obviously, the Houston Outlaws won. As everyone predicted. Actually, I saw Matt predicted it on the desk. I don't know what Matt was smoking, but he got there in the end. So he worked it out. Houston beat the Dallas Fuel, but let's still catch up on things that we might have missed, things that we haven't talked about so far, and really get to it because we are going into the last week of the season. A lot of the standings have finally been locked in, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. But before we get into the playoffs, we've got a couple of things to round out, so let's do it. First of all, I haven't talked about this at all, but the San Francisco Shock signed Striker back, which was a very strange one out of left field. Some of us have sort of questioned why this was done. Striker is obviously historically one of the best traces we've had in the league, just a great player, but he's come back and forth. He started on Boston this year and then left Boston quite promptly. But he's finally back. We sort of theorized within us that Striker is there to play Tracer, which will then hopefully free up Proper to play a lot of things. It's kind of been awkward in this meta because Striker's also played a little bit of Sombra, and his Tracer's been very good, but his Sombra's been a little sussy from time to time, and it's actually, they transitioned to Proper playing a little bit of Sombra as well. After that, he didn't play this weekend. The San Francisco Shock did not play this weekend, so this is all from last weekend's matches, but I think over time we'll start to see where it's really going to stand. But for the Shock, I think this is just filling in a short-term hole, and we'll see how they do in the long run. But awesome to see Striker back in the lineup, and yeah, as I said, we'll see where it goes. So in other news, we have the Philadelphia Fusion. So we're going to talk about the homestand in a minute, but this is the big thing that looks like it's going to have a big impact for the future of the Philadelphia Fusion. Zest has a cast on and is in a sling in the most recent Busan homestand where we saw the Philadelphia Fusion take on the Seoul Dynasty. Zest did not play and Carpe played. Carpe actually played quite well, which was cool to see, but Zest for the playoffs might not be available because with how heavy-handed that thing looks, it looks like it's going to be difficult to play. It's not like it's an injury where he might be able to play through it. Maybe they're just taking precautions, and in a few weeks, it will be fine, and he will be able to be in top shape. But for Fusion fans, they're sweating a little bit, hoping to get their pray to their Carpe shrines to get them over the line, but only time will really tell. They haven't said much about it. I saw Roston made a tweet saying, a lot of you fans have seen that Zest is in a cast. We don't have the full picture, and we will give a statement on it in the future. That has yet to come out yet. So keep an eye out for that one, and I'll report on that one as it happens. All right, in news of teams in Struggletown, the Toronto Defiant have announced just today on October 10th that the health and safety of our players and staff will be our main priority. I don't know if that made sense or I just read it wrong. We have 4 positive COVID-19 cases within our Defiant organization. So organization, not just the players. We're monitoring the remaining players and coaches for signs and symptoms and will continue to keep the community updated. In the meantime, the team will compete remotely until everyone has recovered. We appreciate your continued support as we focus on the team's health so that we can come back strong for the play-ins and the playoffs. They said play-ins? Okay, Toronto, you got to believe in yourselves. You guys can almost lock yourselves into the playoffs. There needs to be some optimism here. But yeah, Toronto Defiant dealing with the COVID issue and outbreak in their facilities. Hopefully not too many of the players get sick and it affects their playoffs ability to practice and also perform at the playoffs. So when do the playoffs start? Playoffs start early November. Play-ins are before that. Play-ins start the week... 2 weeks before? I think play-ins are not this upcoming weekend, the weekend after. Liz confirmed that for me, but I believe that is true. So this weekend will be the last weekend of weekend of regular season for the West, and then next weekend, or is the East play-ins this weekend, and then the West play-ins are the weekend after? I'm not 100% sure. As I said, I have been sort of a little out of the loop in terms of scheduling of all that kind of stuff. So East play-ins this weekend, West play-ins probably the weekend after because the West regular season is still finishing. I believe it is intentionally like that because the Eastern teams, once they have confirmed themselves to the playoffs, they have to travel to LA to be able to get prepped, hopefully get themselves as situated, as practiced, as rested as possible for the playoffs earlier. So I believe that is why the East is performing earlier. So keep that on your radars and keep an eye out. There is 3 teams who are going to be battling it out. Let's go over here here we go. The Hangzhou Spark, the Guangzhou Charge, and the Chengdu Hunters are the 3 teams that will be battling it out for that last spot. Seoul Dynasty, Shanghai Dragons, and the Philadelphia Fusion are locked in. So these teams will be battling. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to play into work. I assume Guangzhou will play Chengdu, and the winner of that will play the Spark. If I was taking a wild stab at it. This one's a little all over the place. Oh yeah, and this is the bracket for the final season, but obviously not filled in. Play-ins. There we go. Yeah, here it is. On October 15th at 3 a.m., the Chengdu Hunters will play the Guangzhou Charge, and then the winner of that game will play the Hangzhou Spark, and the winner of that will qualify for the LA playoffs. And then the Western region, which will be happening the week after, on October 21st, 22nd, which is not this upcoming weekend, the weekend after, will be the Western teams battling it out. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit, and the teams in the West that are on the verge and all that kind of stuff. But before we get there, Dallas Fuel, obviously they had an incredible homestand this weekend. I was there. Big shout out to them for letting me attend and enjoy it. The fans were absolutely incredible. It was awesome to see, another homestand. Esports is just not the same when it's only online. Like, having LAN events, if you've never been to one, it really amplifies everything to do with esports. And it was a really exciting event. Awesome to be able to have that kind of thing. Unfortunately, Dallas Fuel got kind of rolled by the Houston Outlaws in this match, in this Xayah Lucio Bap meta that seems to have taken prevalence as of recent. The Dallas Fuel just could not match the Houston Outlaws. Dante diff on that Xayah. So big shout outs to Dallas for running homestands. Big shout outs to any teams for running homestands right now. And big shout outs to the fans. I got to meet and greet a bunch of you guys, sign, take a bunch of pictures. It was awesome to see all of you. Thank you for coming out. Then we look over to the East. There was a Eastern LAN as well, I think to a smaller degree, at a studio in Busan. This is Zest with a sling, still getting a 6k Dragon Blade. Big shout outs to Zest. But yeah, Seoul Dynasty played the Philadelphia Fusion at a homestand LAN type thing where they just played on a stage. It was really fun to see. It was a great match as well. So big shout outs to all these guys. Good to see Carpe performing on LAN once again. Who is in pajama pants on LAN? That is Aim God? Yeah, I think it's Aim God. Hey, I respect it. Sometimes comfort comes first, Sometimes you just got to feel comfortable on stage, Liz. Hilarious. Yeah, no, but it's good. So good to see homestands happening. Big shout outs to the fans and the crowds for coming out for that one. So now let's turn our preview to the play-ins and the playoffs and what is all up for stake right now. So after these matches, where we stand right now, Dallas Fuel has been confirmed to lock in the number 1 seed overall with them combined. It's a little up in the air of who's taking the 2nd and 3rd seeds. The way that it's working is it's not, if you are drawn for points, like league points, so it's like Los Angeles Gladiators and the Seoul Dynasty are tied for 25 league points equally. There is a match win percentage, which includes the regular season and the tournaments. It's just very fucky. I don't know exactly the answers to what is, who is getting what seedings. That'll come out in the wash eventually. But the big thing you need to keep an eye on is for the final Western spot this upcoming weekend and who is playing for it. So the Toronto Defiant and the London Spitfire are the 2 teams, I guess, and the Washington. Actually, I don't know if Washington Justice can make it. I don't think they can. But Toronto Defiant and London Spitfire are fighting for their lives. The Toronto Defiant, I believe... Actually, let's confirm this so I don't just say things out of my ass. The London Spitfire is playing against New York Excelsior and San Francisco Shock. If they win both, there is no world in which the Toronto Defiant can catch up to them. And the San Francisco Shock are currently 1-3, so it is a winnable match for the London Spitfire. And New York Excelsior is obviously a winnable match for them. And then Toronto Defiant, on the other hand, they are playing against the Florida Mayhem and the Houston Outlaws. And Houston looks to be very good in this meta right now. So if they go 2-0, they really do need to go 2-0 in this match, and then they hopefully want to get over the London Spitfire. I don't really know all the outcomes and that type of stuff, but that is what everyone is playing for. There is no world in which these bottom teams can fall below into the 11, 12, 13. So for the play-ins, we got Boston Uprising, Florida Mayhem, Washington Justice locked in to be playing in the play-ins this following weekend. But it's an interesting one because like Washington Justice, Boston Uprising, and Florida, they've all had moments where they just like hit their stride and become very, very good. So that will be for 2 spots, and whichever one of these 2 remaining teams, out of 4 teams, there will be 2 spots to play for. So it'll be exciting to see those play-ins this upcoming weekend after the regular season finishes. So that's where we stand in terms of the standings of all the teams right now. So let's do a weekly recap on the matches that we just saw. So quick precursor for me. First of all, I didn't do my pick'ems. I blame you guys because I didn't do a weekly recap, so I didn't do my pick'ems. I did do my East ones a little bit earlier than that. So let's do the East first. We had Seoul Dynasty taking on the Hangzhou Spark, and then like somehow, some way, Seoul just likes to fuck with us at some point. And the Hangzhou Spark, historically the worst team in the East this stage, beat Seoul, the best team in the East. Make it make sense. Honestly, there was a really good pairing between Irony and Teru on the double flex support. They had a great series in that match. We got to see the rise of Pineapple. They benched Alpha and played Pineapple, which seemed like a throw, but then Pineapple was absolutely incredible on that Tracer, freeing up Shy to play a lot of other heroes. And it seemed to really click for them. Seoul Dynasty getting caught a little bit on the back foot, and Hangzhou Spark get the win. I don't know. APAC gonna APAC, as you guys said. There's no rhyme or reason. It's almost impossible at this point to predict who's going to win in this region. But so I would expect to see Seoul still be the best in the East. It doesn't really matter as we're going into a new meta anyway for the playoffs. Like, we're not going to see Seoul Dynasty play for multiple weeks. It's really going to come to a new set of things. How much the meta is going to change for the playoffs will really be an exciting thing. But the Hangzhou Spark are peaking at the right time because, as we said, they're playing for the playoffs. That said, they did go on to lose to the Guangzhou Charge 3-0. I don't know. I don't know. I was not able to watch exactly all of these matches and catch up with those. As I said, I was doing a lot of travel this weekend for Dallas, just not having the internet to be able to watch them at the times. But yeah, Hangzhou then goes on to lose to the Guangzhou Charge. Guangzhou also beat the Los Angeles Valiant. Guangzhou went 4-2, I believe, in this stage. They're actually looking quite dominant. Now that they have Xerneas, now that they have Jimmy, these guys have really added a lot. And Piggy, obviously. Very fortunate that they signed Piggy in what ended up being a Xayah meta, and Piggy having a very good performance on that meta and on that hero. And the LA Valiant just sort of slowly fading into non-existence, along with Tay Zonde crying in the club, and they went on to lose to Shanghai Dragons. Shanghai Dragons, also a team that has looked a lot better. They went 6-0 in this weekend on the back of just, they were able to play a lot more Bebe Baptiste. Bebe seems a lot more comfortable. They're playing like Baptiste Zen, with Void playing. I think he played exclusively in these matches. Void just looks very good. So Shanghai Dragons at least getting a little bit of redemption towards the end of this stage, but nothing too crazy. It's, as I said, the meta's changing. We don't really know. The Dragons seem to be... The scary thing, if you are going into the playoffs, is that Shanghai Dragons seem to be very slow with understanding the meta and what is good for them. And it feels like they've heavily missed the mark multiple times throughout this season. When they've been able to play like Who Are You Genji, and they've just been able to find like the easy meta and run with it, they've been good. But it feels like their season has just been plagued with just... We're watching them as like, this doesn't make sense, and they're not playing to the level that we expect from them. So hopefully for the playoffs, that will not be an issue for them. Philadelphia Fusion had a pretty good weekend, beating Chengdu. Chengdu just not really having a very good performance in this stage at all. They don't look coordinated. You know, you're watching Leave play, and Leave's trying to win the game on his own. Jinmu and Leave going sort of missing from time to time on that DPS. But yeah, just Chengdu has been probably one of the most disappointing teams this season. I don't expect them to be the team to make it out of the play-ins unless there's just some crazy meta that they run into. But yeah, it's ever since the dropping of like a Predator, dropping the rest of their supports, it feels like they've never really had a comfortable time playing the meta. They've tried to do Chengdu things and they've gotten multiple wins throughout the season doing that. But then they just have these kind of weekends where they just look bad. And it's just kind of disappointing to see. Then we had the final match, Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Seoul Dynasty. And this was actually an incredibly competitive match. Carpe playing a very good Tracer and really just sort of playing the meta back and forth. We had Bellis playing a bunch and Seoul Dynasty having the flexibility. We got to see some Prophet Ana of all things. I feel like this was more giving opportunity to Stalker to be able to get some matches on stage. That's my guess, my best guess at it. And they just thought it would be funny to put Prophet on Ana because they never ever want to bench Prophet, it feels like. But yeah, it was kind of a fun match. It went back and forth. A lot of just individual pop-offs and fun stuff like that. If you want to go back and watch a match, watch this one. But it didn't really have any implications at the end of the day for it, other than being a fun LAN matchup. So that was the Eastern recap. As I said, the regular season is done for the East. Play-ins are coming this upcoming weekend. It was the Guangzhou Charge are facing the Chengdu Hunters, so that should be a hard one for the Chengdu Hunters because the meta is not changing for the play-ins. Quick reminder, the meta for the play-ins is the meta that we are playing right now, and there is no tournament at the end of this stage. So for a lot of teams, you know, I think Vancouver Titans, New York Excelsior, Vancouver Titans, their season is over. Regular season is over. Gladiators regular season is over. So a bunch of these teams are done. In the West. So let's talk about the West. Quick precursor, there are some matches that I just have not watched because I'm unable to really watch them effectively. But I've caught up as much as I can. And I know a lot of the results. But Houston Outlaws versus the Paris Eternal. Houston Outlaws just looking very good. They played this Zaya setup and were playing really quite well. Paris Eternal just not able to really find any footing. This was not a very close match after the first map. So Dante Go Brute, they just look very strong when they can play this Lastro creative backline. Lastro has that flexibility to play over that Lucio. Merit, Pelican going back and forth, just playing very well. Like Pelican's been able to play that Sombra, but also a lot of that Genji Tracer as of late. And then Merit can also play the Sombra, Tracer, play the hit scan. So most egregious C9 though, yeah, there was a fucking doozy in that match as well. So keep an eye out for that one. Washington Justice versus the Boston Uprising. This was one of the matches I have not been able to catch up on yet, but Washington Justice and the Boston Uprising. Honestly, Boston Uprising go on to this weekend is kind of a disappointing end for them in this setup because Washington is actually a team that you gotta fear. They are in the play-ins. Boston is also right there in the play-ins. I do not believe they can fall out of the play-ins with the current setup, so they are locked in for this. But Washington is kind of in a good place right now. The only thing that I can see going really poorly for the Washington Justice is if this Lucio Bap meta ends up taking full charge. Because it feels like Washington is playing very well when they can play that like Diva double flex support with Assassin on that Sombra. That really seems to be their bread and butter right now. But if Sombra is falling out of the meta, we saw that in the Dallas Fuel Houston Outlaws match, and everyone's playing more of this like Zaya, Lucio, Bap, Brawl, Rush kind of thing where Sombra doesn't seem to be as effective. That could be a really bad turn for the Washington Justice. But I think in the middle of the pack, we might see teams playing more to their strengths rather than playing to the perfect meta. Florida Mayhem went to 5 with the Vancouver Titans. Vancouver were a team that they're pushing every team to map 5. It feels like all of their matches this stage have just been incredibly close. They even went to map 5 with the Paris Eternal. They did get over the edge on that one. But yeah, I've liked what they've been doing with pulling False in. He's been playing the Zaya. I think that's a much better look for them. And I think that is something that needs to be talked about, how False has redeemed himself in a lot of ways towards the end of the season. Like, at the end of the day, at the heart of it, he is a flex tank player. And at the start of the season, it was not flex tank. He was forced into Winston. He did not play well. And I think a lot of people have this unreasonable understanding of, like, False is just a bad player. That's not true. He is a great player, and I hope he's shown that a lot more towards the end of the season. Being able to play heroes that he's a lot more comfortable on. Florida Mayhem have, been struggling with someone's flexibility. He's an incredibly flexible player, but like it doesn't feel like he and the team have wanted to play Diva, and they've been trying to play a lot of that Winston, which doesn't work as well in the West, I believe, especially on some maps against these double flex support setups. They had the same struggle against the Atlanta Reign, where they went to map 5. Speedily Echo, pretty good. This is actually something that I'm curious to see if people really have answers to, because Speedily is one of the main players really playing this Echo, and he's been having a lot of success on that and able to draw the Atlanta Reign over the line. Atlanta has locked in their top 6 spot, so they will be going to the playoffs, not going to have to go through the play-ins, which I'm sure they are pretty happy with, because there is a world in which Atlanta could play against some of these teams and struggle through it. So hopefully they get a meta in the finals, in the playoffs, in which they can really thrive. And every time they have gone to an actual playoffs where the matches matter, they seem to hit a different level. So sure, they're happy to be able to dodge those type of things. Los Angeles Gladiators versus the Washington Justice. This is a pretty clean win here from the Gladiators, just able to play their own style. We saw a little bit of space coming back and forth. Funny Astro comes in to play the Lucio when they want to play that Lucio Bap, and Reiner plays that Winston. As I said, I think they're going back and forth, and we just actually listened to a Space interview after their match that they did against Boston Uprising, sort of talking about how, like, it's an off-tank meta. If we stay in an off-tank meta, I would personally like to see Space play more. But Space said that he was sick in the middle of the stage, so he wasn't able to get the play time and effective practice to be able to integrate him more into the team. So maybe they'll do that in the future. So, but Washington Justice, they look pretty good with that Assassin on that Sombra, as I was saying, but the meta might shift away from them in a lot of ways. They did sort of get rolled a little bit, other than one of the maps against the Gladiators. Dallas Fuel versus Houston Outlaws. This is the match I obviously know the most about. Dallas Fuel just not able to play the Doha Sombra in the same way that we would expect. Something happened in high-end scrims in the West where everyone started playing this like Lucio, Baptiste, Zaya, Sojin, Tracer/Genji meta. And Dallas Fuel just seemed nowhere near as comfortable in this match than they looked so far throughout the rest of the stage. They had been absolutely dominant playing Doha on that Sombra, being able to play around, like, get the hack target, isolate the hack target, play around that. They could play double flex support with Chio's flexibility. They were really, like, kind of moving, and they could play that Fearless Winston with the Brig Ana. Like, maybe they could still play that in, the playoffs if that things, and it's cool to see Fearless getting those reps. But they played Zaya, Lucio, Bap absolutely every single map, and surprisingly, Houston Outlaws were the better team in this setup. Dante Zaya did a very good job of really pushing Harmon onto the back foot, and it felt like Houston Outlaws had the tempo every single time. Like, they were taking the first fights, they were taking it to the Dallas Fuel, and Dallas Fuel were just playing so reactively with all their ultimates, and honestly, Harmon just didn't have a good match. Do want to give a special shout out to Creative as well. His Baptiste was very, very good for the Outlaws, being able to keep Dante alive. His amplification matrices were good. His lamps were incredible. But Merrick, player of the game, absolutely diffing Edison on that Sojin as well. So Dallas going back to the drawing board a little bit on this one. I'm curious to see how they're going to take a break and what this playoffs meta is going to be. Vancouver Titans versus the Paris Eternal. This was a wild match of, like, Vancouver Titans. I think both of the maps that the Paris Eternal got, they full held Vancouver. It was on Dorado and trying to think of what the second map was as well. But yeah, Vancouver just getting full held twice really hurt them. Like, Vancouver, I think, were the better team, but then, yeah, Paris just pulling out some pretty impressive full holds on certain maps, which did push them to the edge, but Vancouver able to get over the line eventually. Disappointing to see, Paris weren't able to get a win with this new squad. Hopefully next weekend, maybe against Boston Uprising. Probably not against San Francisco Shock. They might be able to get their first win with this squad, but not able to get it. Dallas Fuel making their return against the Atlanta Reign, able to play quite well against the Atlanta Reign, getting that win 3-1. I think, Dallas, it honestly and genuinely feels like Houston is the best team in the West right now, and Dallas were able to fall, but I think they're definitely still top 3, and Atlanta Reign just not able to beat that. I have not really watched too much of this match. Gladiators versus Boston. This was another win for the Gladiators. They did lose the third map on a full hold for the Gladiators, but Gladiators are through and through the better team than the Boston Uprising. So, as I said, I am not the best person to give the best kind of weekly recap on this weekend, as I was not able to watch these matches live or really get a good sense of all of them. I've gone back and watched a bunch of them, but I will be watching some of them throughout the week if you guys want to come check those out, as I really get a good understanding of what these teams like. I haven't watched a single Florida match, but they look chaotic, to say the least. So now I got to do a power rankings with everything that I just said. So these are just going to be scuffed as fuck, but hey, here we are. Dallas Fuel is going to go down. I think the Gladiators are below the Dallas Fuel as well. Gladiators have gone 6-0 this stage, but they have had a very easy schedule. I think Houston Outlaws have to go number 1 after beating the Dallas Fuel. I think Atlanta Reign can stay up here, but I don't know if they're in the same tier. I kind of want to do like this. And then San Francisco Shock, Washington Justice, tier break. We didn't see NYXL play this weekend. London Spitfire, Toronto Defiant. Let's go back to the Piggums. Let's get a reminder of where we are right now. Because Toronto had a pretty bad weekend the previous weekend. They lost to Vancouver, but they beat the Shock. Fuck me, dude. The West is also in chaos. Shock beat Atlanta? Yeah. But then... And Atlanta's definitely shouldn't be that high, actually. Maybe Atlanta... Oh my god, I accidentally grabbed a tier break. God, this is fucking awful. I think I'm going to put Toronto higher. I have no idea how to put these teams anywhere. Maybe no tier break between the top 3. What if I did that? I think Atlanta's still too high, though. I think Atlanta... You can't put Washington in that tier. You're right. Oh, God. Washington's got to go to this tier, but I think Washington is probably the best in this tier. But... Shock over Reign. What do we think, chat? What do we think? I need some help on this one. Boston have gone back and forth so much. They lost to Washington, so they need to stay below Washington. Is London really that bad? They got 3-0'd by Dallas and 3-0'd by Glads. But then who do they... Like, those are hard matches. They beat Paris and then they beat Vancouver. Okay, yeah. They're very hard to place right now. So I think they're definitely in this tier. I think there's a world where London is above Florida. But as I said, I don't have a good gauge on Florida right now. Depends if London gets 3-0 by Shock. Florida above Boston. I think they're like the same is the problem. Florida went to map 5 with Atlanta. Yeah, I guess that is the most recent. Do I genuinely believe Atlanta is here? Yeah, I think I do. Boston whipped Florida though, did they? When was that? Is that like first week? They did 3-0 Florida. But that was 2 weeks ago. it's a really awkward stage as well because there are bye weeks and we haven't really had bye weeks for a lot of these teams. In that, like, it feels like these bye weeks have been more and more impactful because usually the West, like, it just feels weird. I'm just going to leave it like this. Like, I don't know. Like, this feels like a very just... I think you can flip Florida and Boston. I think you can make arguments for certain, like, these people. Like, I think you can make arguments for these guys being anywhere up in these top 5. There's a world in which Atlanta is down here, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Can I convince you to give Shock over Glads? No. Like, I'm not going to say that, like, Gladiators went 6-0. At the end of the day, Gladiators went 6-0, Shocker 1-3. Like... I don't, like, you can make an argument for it that, like, Gladiators had an easier schedule, Shocker being a hard schedule, but Shocker 1-3. Like, and Glads are 6-0. Like, I don't think I can really fuck around with that too much. This week we're found on Wednesday, so it's hard to read everyone, and that's sort of it, right? Like, and that's what sort of flipped. This Lucio Bap Zaya stuff sort of flipped everything on its head. But then, like, the middle teams aren't really playing that, and they're really playing to their own strengths. So we're just gonna leave it like this. Let's just leave this as our West, and we'll go from there. Okay. The East. I'm going to ignore this match. Just straight up, I don't care about that match of Spark beating Seoul. I think Chengdu goes second to last. Shanghai is going to go... I think Guangzhou goes over... I don't think I'm going to put a tier break at all. I'm just not going to put a tier break, and I'm just going to put them all as their own little clump. Fucking APAC is APAC. I think Philly goes to 4. I think Philly to 4, Valiant at 5, Chengdu at 6, Hangzhou Spark at 7. I genuinely don't believe Charge are better than Shanghai, though. Like... Yes, Guangzhou have been better, but I actually think Shanghai found their footing this weekend. Like, I genuinely think they found their footing. So I actually think they're in a good spot. They played really well this weekend, and I think this is not the Shanghai Dragons that, like, the Guangzhou Charge had beaten and stuff like that. Jimmy clears lip. Absolutely ridiculous. I think this is where I'm going to put it. Like... It's a fucking mess anyway. You can make an argument for any one of these teams over other. Like, Spark beat Seoul Dynasty this weekend, right? Like, it's fucking impossible to know. I'm really excited to see the play-ins. Like, the play-ins is really the question because we have the Charge, the Spark, and the Hunters going toe-to-toe. I think the Charge have been the best out of these teams in this meta, but Spark have looked much better this most recent weekend when, you know, like, they beat the Seoul Dynasty. But... Philly beat Dragons, though? Yeah. When did Philly beat Dragons? Like, that's your argument is, like, because you're going back, when was they beat them? This weekend? Week 2? Yeah, week 2. Like, Shanghai were really bad in week 2. Right? So it's like, things have changed a lot in the last couple of weeks, and that's why I'm taking out the tier breaks. It's like, it's so variable right now because the meta has been changing so rapidly, and teams have just been, like, finding their footing and stuff like that. I think anything's possible. I'm going to leave it like this. This is my power rankings for the week. It's just fucking chaos in the East. The West is a little all over the place, but as I said, I think there was a massive meta shift in the last few days heading into this week, so I think that might have thrown a bunch of teams off as well. So those are my power rankings. Let me do my pick'ems for this upcoming weekend. So, London versus New York Excelsior. I'm going to go 3... I think it's going to be close. I'm going to go... I think New York Excelsior have nothing to lose, and I don't think London looks super, super comfortable in this meta, and I'm curious to see how... I guess it is like a Lucio Bap Zaya, but, like, if they play, like, Poco Lucio Bap, that could be really good for them, actually. They put Sparker on, like, Sojin, Shax on Tracer, Poco Zaya, Admiral Landon, or Admiral Khan. Like, I think Landon's Bap's been really good, though. So I think this could be a good meta for London, but I'm curious to see how they do. Shock vs Paris, 3-0 for Shock. Toronto Defiant vs Florida Mayhem. This is like a very losable match for Toronto, but I actually don't think... I think they're going to go 3-1. I think Toronto's going to perform quite well. Shock versus London. I think London has everything to play for. And I think the Shock have nothing to play for. Plus, if they play the meta that I just outlined, I think London could be very good. And I do not think that is a massive strength for the Shock. Maybe the Shock are just going to be really good in scrims and just going to come. But fuck it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm just gonna leave it. I'm the harbinger of chaos, because that would make the play-in the play-in playoff spot like very interesting, and that would make this match really exciting for Toronto. Boston versus New York Excelsior. I think Boston wins 3-1. Houston versus Florida. I think Houston wins 3-0. Boston beats Paris, but I'm gonna give Paris a map. I'm gonna give Paris 2 maps. Toronto versus Houston. I'm gonna go 3-1 for Toronto. Off the goop, hey, sometimes you got to risk it for the biscuit, you know? No one wants to be a safety Sally out here. Those are my pick'ems for this week. I think it'll be fun. It should be, hopefully be a chaotic. It's because it is the last regular season weekend as well. There's not a lot to play for a lot of these teams. And like, and I think that might affect teams. And also like, Shock, they don't need to get good at this meta. This is the last time that they're going to have to play these matches. So... I'm curious to see what happens this weekend. I think it could be a little spicy, so I've got a little spicy in my pick'ems as well. That is it for my weekly recap. I will be back in the truck. My absence has finally should be over. So appreciate all of you for enjoying this time. Overwatch 2 is out. It seems to be doing quite well. It's successful on Twitch. Overwatch League hasn't really seen too much of a bump in viewership, but that's probably because no one knows where we are because we're on YouTube. But hope you guys enjoyed it. It's been a great couple of weekends. Appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe. I'm going to be doing a couple of reviews this week, but honestly, I've been just trying to play some ranked. So if you want to come check me out and watch my washed as support, play some ranked games and try and climb through the ladder, come hang out on my stream. Appreciate you all. Thank you very much. And I will see you guys next time. Mwah.